Welcome to episode 3 of the RZR Fantasy Podcast. If this is the first time you're joining us, we're talking single season long fantasy football, aka redraft fantasy football, all show long. The RZR Fantasy Podcast is hosted by myself, Nick Faber, and my co-conspirator, Jon Valencia. What's up, John?
What's up, Nick? How's it going? Happy as always to be here and talk some fantasy.
Yes, I'm excited. We should have a very good show on deck for the fans and for us. Anything new? I know you sit at home most of the time, but I mean, what was new for dinner? Did you have anything new, crazy for dinner, or same old, same old?
Same old. I had some Taco Bell, so not really healthy. But
what do you get when you go to Taco Bell?
It's got to be the steak quesadilla with some sour cream on the side.
I'm a Crunchwrap Supreme kind of guy. Give me that meal with a little soft taco on the side. That's just enough. Baja Blast all day.
I'm a soft taco as well. And cheese gordita crunch. You can't sleep on that either.
No, you cannot. No, you cannot. We could do a whole podcast about Taco Bell. We'll try not to do that right now. For the show here, find it on SoundCloud, Spreaker, YouTube, and at LARedZoneReport.com under the podcast section. And on Twitter at RZR Fantasy NFL. We like to incorporate the fans any way we can, right? First and foremost, we let the fans decide what we're talking about each episode. So jump on Twitter and try to follow us so you can see what the poll is and make sure your vote is counted for. For this episode, the fans chose between Comeback Kids, second round mock draft, rookie rankings, and I'm not touching. The fans selected Comeback Kids as the theme for this episode, and we could not be happier. There's a lot of players who disappointed me, we'll say. Well, there's a lot of players who just kind of pissed me off last season, right? I was excited for a plethora of players who did not come through for me. But they all have a good chance at winning Comeback Player of the Year. We're going to try to talk about them all right now. First and foremost, I also want to talk about Carson Wentz, who I think is the leader of this Comeback Player of the Year. I mean, right, 2017, he was darn near the MVP. Arguably, maybe the MVP should have been. Unfortunately, he injured himself, or he got injured, and it kind of all went downhill. He was upstaged by his backup quarterback, Nick Foles, who went on to win a Super Bowl. Carson Wentz came back this year, missed a couple games to start the season, but never found that his mojo back. It seemed, I don't want to say he was worried or anything of that nature, but maybe his team wasn't around, the plays weren't right, or he just didn't have that confidence that we saw in 2017. Regardless, he finished 21st, right? So is Carson Wentz going to bounce back, John? I know this is a guy that you really like. You're a big Philly fan, so let's try to keep the love out of it. Is Carson Wentz going to be a top 3 quarterback like he was in 2017, top 5, number 1? What are we thinking this year for him?
I think top 3 is a little bit generous. I think that he can go back to 2017 form where I think if he finished that full season, he would have been MVP that year. I think he gets back to that form, especially now with he still has a stout offensive line in front of him, arguably one of the best in football. Great supporting cast. They had J.J. Arcega-Whiteside in the draft. They acquired Deshaun Jackson. They acquired Jordan Howard. So the pieces are certainly around him. It really just all comes down to health. And it's definitely worrisome with Carson Wentz. He's missed a lot of time the past 2 years. But in terms of where I think he finishes at, I would say he finished probably in that top 5 to 8 range. But of course, it really all hinges on his health and how many games he plays this season. But regardless, he's so supremely talented. And if he's able to put together a full 16-game season, I wouldn't be surprised to see him finish as a top 3 quarterback. But I'll keep it a little bit realistic and predict he finishes in that top 5 to 8 range.
I mean, it's there. We saw that it was there. I like Carson Wentz a lot this year. I think the team is going to be a little bit, a little bit back to what we saw in 2017. I mean, they were a playoff team last year, but were they a playoff team last year? Did they make the playoffs last year? They did.
They actually won as well, that Chicago Bears, Cody Parkey missed field goal.
That's right. Did they win that game or did the Bears lose that game? That's a question for another day. But Carson Wentz, he's good. I like him. I like Carson Wentz a lot, and I'm all about him this year. Personally, I have him ranked 8, right? So I have him ranked behind Baker Mayfield, behind Jared Goff, behind Deshaun Watson, Matt Ryan, Pat Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck. those are all guys that I'm sticking to, and I would rather have than Carson Wentz. Baker is the one big question. Me, I definitely would rather have Jared Goff. I think his offensive coach is kind of like got better scheme going. I think he's got better talent around him. So I think there's more just intangibles for Jared Goff to have a better season than Carson Wentz. But Baker Mayfield's where it gets a little questionable, where Baker Mayfield is, coming into a second year. Is he he's just questionable. We don't know what we're really going to get out of Baker. We saw some heroic plays last year, and we liked what we saw, and we all want to believe. But he's got OBJ, he's got Jarvis Landry, David Njoku, Antonio Callaway, Rashad Higgins, Kareem Hunt, Nick Chubb, Duke Johnson. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. Unfortunately, I don't see that many weapons. Sure, Philadelphia gets Deshaun Jackson back, and they went out and signed Jordan Howard, and they added Miles Sanders, and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and they have Alshon Jeffrey. Sure, they have Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. I mean, there's a lot of weapons there. I just don't buy into them as much offensively as I do Cleveland and Los Angeles, which is why I got Goff and Mayfield over Wentz. I mean, would you say that's fair?
Yeah, it's certainly fair. I would probably agree with that, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I like Wentz. I do have him over Russell Wilson, Drew Brees, Kirk Cousins. Agreed?
Yeah, that sounds good to me. This dude, Wentz, he has quarterback one upside for sure. I know, like you said, the offense in Philly isn't as volatile as it is probably in Cleveland with Baker, with that OBJ and a bunch of weapons there now. But with Wentz, I think, like I said, the weapons are around him, and the talent is just off the charts. So a full season for him at this stage in his career just could do wonders. And like I said, I think he could certainly be an MVP candidate this year.
Third season, that's right. Third season? Fourth season? I don't know.
It's his fourth season.
Fourth season. So that's breakout year. I was going to say that for the third season anyway, but it's breakout time for him. But like I said, I have him ranked right over Russell Wilson, who's another guy in the comeback train. He was number one. He was number one in 2017 when it comes to quarterbacks. He was a beast. I mean, needless to say. Last year, he dealt with some struggles with Doug Baldwin being injured for most of the season, not really having a wide receiving crew or offensive line, and he basically had to stand on his head to even become the 8th best quarterback in fantasy, which he was. So, I mean, he didn't have, he wasn't out of the top 12 or anything. It wasn't a huge drop-off, but he was, not as prolific as maybe some wanted when drafting him, probably as one of the top quarterbacks last year. So he finished 8th. Do you think he comes back? I have him ranked 9th this year. I don't see him being a big comeback guy just because I'm not bought into DK Metcalf. And I'm not bought into the offensive line. And they lost their offensive coordinator. And I just think there's a lot of moving parts right now in Seattle where I'm not buying into Russell Wilson fantasy this year. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, at this current ADP, I'm probably not buying Wilson. I really still worry about that offensive line. They haven't done anything in 4 or 5 years to improve that unit, which is just mind-boggling. And they added 3 wide receivers in the draft. I really like DK Metcalf, but I think it could take some time for him to kind of acclimate himself to the NFL. I think he's definitely a good deep threat for Russell Wilson, who's one of the best deep ball throwers in the league. But as a whole, that offense just really is a bunch of just loose parts, it looks like, especially in the wide receiving core. I mean, I like Tyler Lockett, but after Lockett and Metcalf, it gets really, really, really thin. I mean, Jerron Brown and David Moore are their current wide receiver 3 and 4. So just at Seattle as a whole, I really don't like that offense, especially no Doug Baldwin for Russell Wilson. I think that could kind of be a big tick to his production as well, probably more so than a lot of us are anticipating. So yeah, at Russell Wilson's current ADP, I'm not really buying him, although of course the talent is phenomenal and probably one of the best quarterbacks in the league. But for fantasy purposes, yeah, probably not someone I'm targeting this year on my roster.
7th round, basically, we're going into the 7th round looking for a quarterback. Okay, we got our team stacked up. 7th round, we decided we want a quarterback. Drew Brees, and then 2 guys on the comeback train: Russell Wilson and Carson Wentz. Those are your top 3 options: Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, Carson Wentz. Who would you prefer on your team then? Had to choose of those 3.
That's tough because Brees and Wilson, they're just so consistent. But at that point, I'll probably take Wentz just because of the upside, and then I'll look later on in the draft and maybe add someone. Let me look at ADP real quick. Maybe add someone like Dak Prescott or Derek Carr. Prescott's going to be consistent each week. Not the highest upside, but yeah, I think like if you're going to go Wentz in the 6th or 7th round, where he's currently being drafted, you definitely want to look later on in probably rounds 11 or 12 and kind of get a good backup like Kirk Cousins or someone who you know can be productive on a week-to-week basis.
Do you normally try to draft a backup quarterback?
It depends. Typically, yes, especially if I have a guy with an early bye week. But it really just depends who I get. But especially with durability a concern, that's certainly the time I would look to get draft the backup later on.
See, I'm so against the backup quarterback. I'll take my chances with. I'm trying to look at someone who gets injured. I don't know, Carson Wentz, for example, for sure, or Deshaun Watson, or Aaron Rodgers. These guys who have shown that they've gotten injured before. I would take them and ride with no backup quarterback, and just by week 8 or 9, if they get injured, you have a backup quarterback. Are you having a backup quarterback all season long, or are you keeping them for the first 3 or 4 weeks until there's a can't miss waiver wire and you're dropping them for Phillip Lindsay in week 3? How long do you keep a backup quarterback, or is it all year? Are you just always having a backup quarterback just in case?
It certainly depends on how many roster spots, especially bench slots you're allotted.
We'll say 6 bench spots, 7 bench spots.
And it definitely gets a little more risky to keep a backup quarterback all year. Typically, that's something I try to do just because you never know when injuries are going to hit. And relying on the waiver wire for a quarterback, I don't trust that. Last year you could have maybe found yourself lucky with a guy like Nick Mullins who gave you a pretty good stretch there. But overall, I definitely like to keep some security and stability at the quarterback position.
So, for example, let's say you end up drafting Carson Wentz, and then later on you end up drafting in the 12th round, we'll say Dak Prescott, because I think you and I both like him, or at least I know I do. But we'll say you get Dak Prescott or even Kirk Cousins, whoever you fancy more, to back up Carson Wentz. Excuse me. Is Carson Wentz your guy every week, or are you doing matchup base? Are you going to sit here and try to ponder at which matchup's going to be better and what weather is going to be better, and are you just going to ride Carson Wentz no matter what, and Dak or Kirk is your backup no matter what?
That's a really good question, and I'd probably just ride with Wentz just because of that weekly upside you get. It depends if I'm going with 2. But when you're investing that much into a quarterback, I think you have to play him each week. It's kind of like stud status. I don't want to use that term loosely, but one certainly has that type of upside. So I don't think you can really bench a guy like him, even if you have a guy like Dak Prescott or Kirk Cousins with a favorable matchup. You just got to ride it with your guy.
Right. What if someone like Dak starts to produce better numbers than Carson Wentz? And that's why I don't draft a backup quarterback, because the chances of you drafting a very good backup quarterback, like last year you could get Jared Goff in the last round, the year before Matt Ryan in the last round, year before. There's just always a player, right? There's always a player. So say you're just good and you draft a backup quarterback who's also successful, ends up being a top 8 quarterback, Phillip Rivers maybe, or something like that. And then you also had drafted a quarterback that's the top 5. You got a top 5 and a top 6 quarterback both on your team. It becomes like a headache. You start losing a game by 5 points, and you could have started the backup quarterback who got 7 more points than your other quarterback, but the matchups tell you to start your regular quarterback, so there's no reason that you would ever start your back. It just becomes this huge frustrating headache that makes you pull your hair out, and then you're tossing and turning on Saturday night trying to tinker with your lineup on Sunday. For me, I just try to avoid that, even when it comes to the tight end position. And for me, there's always someone, especially if you're playing in a 1 quarterback league. We're talking 2 quarterbacks, this is a different story, but we're talking just redraft 1 quarterback. There's guys like Josh Allen that's always going to be out there, like Lamar Jackson always going to be out there, stuff like that. So at that point, I say, let me ride and die on bye week, with just whoever I think is going to have the best matchup and hope that my team can come through. So that's why I don't do it. I just wanted to pick your brain about that. I'm glad we got through that, though.
Worst case, you open up the phone lines and try to trade one of them. That's also an underrated aspect of drafting a quarterback later on, I think, is that if they turn out and blow up and even outperform the quarterback you drafted ahead of him, you have 2 solid quarterbacks, and one of them I'm sure you could trade, especially if there's a playoff caliber team out there who needs a quarterback on their roster.
That is true. And actually, I am the worst when it comes to trades. I do not trade. I am very, very I'm very biased about the team that I draft, and I think that everyone that I have on my team is going to be a superstar, so I can never get rid of them. So I can't put myself in the headache of trying to decide which quarterback I should trade because I'll know it's always going to be the one that I don't because that's the luck I have no matter what, so I just avoid that and put everything into my one quarterback and ride and die with them. And normally I'm very good at what I do. So I'm very good at picking the quarterback to ride and die with last year, aka Jared Goff. One of them, though, was Aaron Rodgers, who was not that successful, except he did win me my championship, so I still love him. Anyways, we're getting very off topic. Let's jump back a little bit to comeback players of the year. I wanted to talk a little bit about running backs. So there's a couple names that really stuck out to me. One big one being Leonard Fournette, right? He was the 9th best running back last year, in 2017. And then the 41st running back in 2018. That's a 32 position drop off. Injuries kind of derailed it. Jacksonville as a team derailed him. Is Leonard Fournette someone that we can expect to bounce back this year and be a top 15, top 10, top 20 running back?
I'm very wary regarding Leonard Fournette right now just because of those chronic leg injuries. That's obviously something that doesn't go away, and we've already seen it hinder his playing time in the NFL. Especially with I love the volume he gets, but at the same time, it's kind of worrisome just because he's going to be toting the rock so much that the possibility of injury is even greater for him. It's tough to tell with Fournette. Right now, what's his draft position? I think it was a 4th round. I believe I looked at it before. That's not bad value for a guy who's a workhorse back for their team. But like Wentz, like other players, it just comes down to injuries with Fournette. He's probably not someone I'm going to target. I don't think I really targeted him last year either just because I was worried about the injuries. But if he slips a little bit, it's the 5th, maybe probably not the 6th round. But if he's there, I think that's a slam dunk pick just at that value with the combination of upside and talent he has.
I mean, if he slips to the 6th round, that is absolutely a slam dunk. So what I'm showing right now is he's going 303. So right after the turn in the 3rd round, you'll be looking at someone like Devonta Freeman, Leonard Fournette, Marlon Mack, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry, Kerryon Johnson. To be all honest, I want every other running back until the 4th round before I want Leonard Fournette. I just am not bought into him. I'm way more bought into Raquel Armstead, the backup, the rookie they drafted this year. Got to see him at the Senior Bowl, and it was outstanding. And I really think he's going to be a successful running back in the NFL. So I'm kind of bypassing Leonard Fournette all the way. Yeah, if he's in the 5th or 6th round, sure, I'm not going to pass him. But 3rd round, even down to the 4th round, I'm taking guys like Marlon Mack, Josh Jacobs, Aaron Jones, Derrick Henry, Kerryon Johnson, Phillip Lindsay, Sony Michel, Devonta Freeman, maybe Damian Williams, all over Leonard Fournette. Is there anyone? Are you taking Fournette above all those guys? Because he's listed above all those guys except for Damian Williams, Devonta Freeman, Leonard Fournette, and then Mack, Jacobs, Jones, Henry, Johnson, Lindsay, Michelle. Are you on board with the ADP where you're taking them higher than all those guys?
Yeah, I thought he was going a little bit later, but yeah, 3.03 is a little bit early for me. I still do like him over most of those backs, though. I think really the only one that I would undoubtedly take over him is Kerryon Johnson, which I know you would be happy with as well. But just at 303, I think his upside and just the volume, the guaranteed volume he's going to get. I mean, I know you like Raquel Armstead. I like him with 2 coming out of Temple. But how early is he going to be incorporated into the offense? How many touches is he really going to get on a consistent basis?
Probably the third.
There's really just no one.
Probably the 3rd week, right after Leonard Fournette hurts his knee. So I mean, I'm not. That's why I'm not buying into it. I know it's hard. It's horrible to kind of base on predicting an injury, but man, Fournette just is too scary for me to spend a 3rd or a 4th round pick. Even if he falls to the 4th round, and I'm looking at him, Phillip Lindsay, Sony Michel. I would rather have Sony Michel and Derrick Henry over Leonard Fournette if he falls to the 4th round. And I'm not scared to say it, just because I bet that those guys play, a handful more games than Leonard Fournette. He's almost as guaranteed as you can get that someone's gonna get injured. Am I incorrect in saying that?
I would agree with that. I mean, that's really the only. I don't want to say the only turnoff with him, but definitely the primary turnoff that has even forced his ADP to slip into the early 3rd round, I think. Because last year he was a late 1st round guy, early 2nd round guy. Now we see he gets hurt last year. Now he just keeps slipping down the board. And if he gets hurt again, I mean, he's just going to continue to slip from year to year. And I how long is his career even going to last in Jacksonville if he can't put together a full 16 or even like a 12-game season on a consistent basis?
And something else to think about too, like Leonard Fournette was a successful running back because he was getting the ball pounded to him, right? So if Jacksonville wants to be successful in the upcoming seasons, they're not gonna give him 250 for carries. Now, if they do, the volume's there. Sure, I missed out on Leonard Fournette, but you would think that Jacksonville is going to be smart and they're going to kind of reduce his carries and let other guys take some reps. If that's the case, I think he's going to be hurt because Nick Foles is there. Like, he wasn't hurt because Blake Bortles was there, because they just gave it to him 30 times a game, so he still produced for us. But if he's not getting the rock 30 times a game, and he still has, to me, a very mediocre quarterback with very mediocre wide receivers around who I'm waiting for someone to step up, and I can't wait. I think it's going to be Keelan Cole. It could be our boy DJ Sharp. We'll see. We'll see who steps up, baby. But I'm just saying, I'm scared of their passing offense, which scares me of their run offense, which is another reason why I would take someone like Sony Michel, because I think Tom Brady still be able to whip that ball around a little bit enough to open up running holes for Sony. And I understand it's scary to take a running back. Like, you don't know if it's going to be James White or Sony Michel. But when Sony Michel played last year, it was Sony Michel's backfield. James White I saw firsthand in fantasy. I saw James White go from, scoring me 17 points a game to 2 points a game, 3 points a game, because Sony Michel literally came in and just stepped right up. If he's going to continue to do that and they're going to try to save Tom Brady's arm for the playoffs and they're going to run the ball, which I think that's how New England's going to start shifting, then I'm all in on Sony Michel, because they're going to pound it with them. They're going to give it to him just as much as Fournette was getting it in the first time, or in his, early his career. Because New England, players go in there and you can flip them right out, especially the running back position. They don't care who you are. You're just another running back, So I'll jump on the Sony Michel train. Are you on Sony this year or no?
I'm kind of hesitant just because you just never know with New England backs. I mean, he was drafted in the first round, so that certainly speaks to how the team feels about him. And yeah, the highs last year were really high. And James White, he's obviously more of a pass-catching back. But, I mean, they still have Michelle White, Rex Burkhead, Damian Harris, who they drafted in the third round. So there's definitely a lot of mouths to feed in that backfield. And I think New England generally is a team who likes to rotate guys in and out. So I really do like the Michelle upside, especially just based on his draft capital last year. But he's not really a guy I'm heavily targeting. Although, I mean, if I find him at a good value, he's certainly someone I'll grab. But I think the middle of the fourth is kind of early for him compared to a guy like maybe Mark Ingram, who we'll probably talk about here in a little bit. And Darius Geis in the bottom of the fifth round is someone I really, really like this year as well.
Two things. First thing is that I agree with New England spending a first-round pick on Sony Michel and a first-round pick on N'Keal Harry. That's why I like those guys, because you just don't see New England do that. So when they do that, you jump on board. Second thing is it's a great transition to Mark Ingram, who is on the comeback list. Mark Ingram was sixth in 2017, sixth best running back. Suspended for the first 3 or 4 games last year, finished 32nd. Broke out in his first game back. Never came back, never saw him again, was never fantasy relevant. It was all AK. It was Kamara's team in New Orleans. And Mark Ingram just didn't have it anymore. And there was always hate. It looked like there was always hate between Ingram and Peyton. So it was good to see Ingram go out and get to a team that I think is going to suit him extremely well. I was on a fantasy podcast show not too long ago, and they brought up the metrics of how much Baltimore as a team runs it through the A and B gap, and how much Mark Ingram runs the ball through the A and B gap and how well he does. And it literally is like the perfect puzzle piece, like Cinderella's shoe going on her foot. It's the perfect fit, Mark Ingram in Baltimore. So is he a guy that you're jumping on then? If you're thinking early, mid-4th round, if he's sitting there, is that someone you would be taking, like we were just talking about?
Yeah, I think so. He's really just been a model of consistency throughout his career. Last year, you mentioned he missed a few games due to suspension, but before that, he was a back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher in New Orleans. And at first, I was kind of hesitant about him just because he's not in New Orleans anymore, and that's obviously a fantasy goldmine. But like you said, I really like the fit in Baltimore. He's a tremendous inside runner, especially with the burst he possesses. And Baltimore has some backs on the roster, but I think Ingram, he's their most balanced back. Definitely should see most of the work out of there. And a good pass catching back as well. I think that's kind of an underrated aspect of his game. I mean, he's not an Alvin Kamara when it comes to receiving, but he's a solid pass catching back. And right now, going off the board as RB24, I think that's pretty solid value for him as well, as a low end RB2.
Yeah, I have him ranked 23rd. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say a very underappreciated pass catcher. Right. Sure, they have Justice Hill there. Sure, they have Kenneth Dixon, who are both very good pass catchers. So I don't think Mark Ingram's going to be used in like the most pass catching situations. But he's there, and when Lamar Jackson is throwing the ball, he likes to scramble, and you're going to need a running back who can kind of scramble with you. And if you need to dump off, that's going to be Mark Ingram, and he's very good at that. So we'll see. I like him. I have him ranked 23rd. You said he's going 24th right now. So I have him right where he should be, basically. I like him again. I'll take Sony Michel over him, I guess, to just kind of like list why I have him where I have him. I would probably take him over the rookie David Montgomery, though I do like Montgomery and I like his landing spot in Chicago. The rookie running backs scare me a little bit, but what if he replicates Jordan Howard? What if he's better than Jordan Howard? So then I'd be pissed that I missed on him because I drafted Mark Ingram. So that's the question. That's where Darius Geis, like you said, Juice. Where is he? Is he going to be the man in Washington? Is Kenyon Drake going to be better than Mark Ingram? Like, those are a couple tough ones in my opinion. Are you taking Mark Ingram? You're on the clock, bottom of the fourth round, right? You're ending the fourth round. You went 3 wide receivers. You went crazy. You're going running back now. You got to start going running back. So you got Mark Ingram, Chris Carson, Kenyon Drake, Darius Geis. Who are you taking? Miles Sanders. We'll even throw him in there.
It really just comes down between Ingram and Geis for me. I know Geis is being drafted pretty much a whole round later, even more than that. But
right.
And then Adrian Peterson is being very underappreciated right now in fantasy as well. I don't even know if he's being drafted at this current. Oh yeah, he's a RB50 right now, Adrian Peterson, which, I mean, he was a top 15 running back, if I recall correctly, last year, which not many people are talking about. And he's still, I mean, obviously not the old AD of the past, but, I mean, he's still a productive running back. I think he fit really well in Washington. But to answer your question, I guess I would go Ingram just because I think he's more of a sure thing right now. As much as I love Geis and the upside there, coming back from a season-long injury, so that's never something you could be optimistic about. And with Ingram, like we said, he's an underappreciated pass catcher, and I think just in Baltimore, that offense really will help him thrive in fantasy and be a productive back again this year.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Mark Ingram, I mean, the guys I said to recap: Chris Carson, Kenyon Drake, Darius Geis, James White, Mark Ingram. Kenyon Drake would be the one that really, I'd spare me on Chris Carson. I don't like him this year. I like Rashad Penny a lot. I don't think it's going to be Carson's backfield. Ingram and Kenyon Drake, really, for me, just because I don't know what Geis is going to give me. Like you said, AP is still there. I mean, heck, they got Chris Thompson, who I think could be a solid running back, especially in PPR leagues. He's going to get a share. So it just scares me what's happening in Washington, kind of more like a 3 or 4-headed monster. So that leaves me Kenyon Drake, where Drake is the guy, right? So that's kind of what I want to go with. Ingram even has more, people to worry about than Kenyon Drake does. But Kenyon Drake does have Kalen Ballage behind him, who I actually really do like a lot this year. So I'm kind of worried about Kenyon Drake. But if it comes down to it, I guess in the beginning I said I'd probably take Mark Ingram. But really, when you look at it, maybe I would take Kenyon Drake. I think Josh Rosen's going to go to that offense and do something special, do something a little bit that we haven't seen. He's got a very good wide receiving core, very fast. All he's got to do is chuck that ball. Albert Wilson, Kenny Stills, those boys are fast. Devontae Parker is still talented. He's an NFL player, so he's somewhat talented. He's more talented than Kevin White, I would say. So there's something's going for him. But I'm just saying, I like Kenyon Drake there. I like Kenyon Drake, but we again digress. So let's kind of bring it back to comeback player of the years here. We are running down to our final, 10, 15-ish minutes, and we still haven't even got to the wide receivers where there's a plethora of players. I'm going to list off a few players, and then let's just jump into them and talk about a few of them. First, the guy that comes to mind for me is AJ Green. Went from 10th in 2017 to 41st in 2018. Obviously, injuries kind of caused that. Alshon Jeffrey went from 20th to 27th. Not a huge drop. Larry Fitzgerald went from 5th to 26th. Robbie Anderson, 19th to 36th. There's a couple of those guys that are players that we might really be liking this year, like for me, I love A.J. Green. I'm back on A.J. Green. Just because he got injured, I'm not scared of the Cincinnati offense. I have him ranked 9th right now. Are you liking A.J. Green?
Absolutely. I always love me some A.J. Green. I think he's been one of the more underappreciated receivers of this past decade, honestly. And it's just because he plays in Cincinnati. They haven't won anything. I think currently the longest active streak of a non-playoff win, of not winning playoff games. I think it's been over 20 years at this point. I could be wrong on that. But A.J. Green, he's a buy every single year, especially if you get him in, early second round at this point.
He's going 307.
That's ridiculous.
Steal. He's going after Amari Cooper.
Wow.
Gross.
Yeah, A.J. Green in the 3rd round, sign me up every single day of the week for that.
For real, dude. For real. Like, I don't want to talk to the person who comes up to me and says he wants Amari Cooper instead of A.J. Green. I don't even want to talk to that guy. I'll push him aside, bro. What the hell? Yeah, I like A.J. Green a lot, man. I like him a lot. I have him ranked 9th. Right now he's going 13th wide receiver. Like I said, people going in front of him, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, which I can kind of see, T.Y. Hilton, which I can kind of see, Adam Thielen, which I'm not the biggest Adam Thielen guy this year, Juju, Antonio, Mike Evans. All those guys kind of, rightfully so going in front of AJ. But I would take AJ probably over Keenan Allen. And, the big debate for me would be Mike Evans, T.Y. Hilton, AJ Green. Who do you think is going to end the season with the most PPR fantasy points? Mike Evans, T.Y. Hilton, AJ Green.
Man, that's tough. All three are studs this year.
That's what I'm saying.
Dude, go ahead.
Yo, I was saying that's what I'm saying. They're all studs. Like Evans with Winston and Arians. Who did I say? T.Y. Hilton with Luck and the whole Indianapolis squad, and then AJ Green, who's just AJ Green. Who you think is going to finish more PPR points?
I'm gonna put my money on T.Y. Hilton here. He played last year with a pretty aggravating injury, and he was a stud all year. Now they added a bunch of more pieces around him. They get Devin Funchess, so I think can add a lot to that offense. And another year with Hilton adding rapport with Andrew Luck, I think will do them really well. And Indy, I think, is going to be one of the best teams in the AFC this year. I think that offense is going to be dynamite. So Hilton, I'll take in PPR. I think he's going to be the heavy target for Andrew Luck this year.
I think during the offseason, what we'll do is go through these episodes and we'll kind of edit them up and we'll take these predictions and we'll run a whole episode, kind of and look back at these. So I'm interested to see Mike Evans, T.Y. Hill, and AJ Green. I'm taking AJ Green. Like he's the lowest of the draftees and he's got the least prolific offense with a new head coach and all this and that. But he's got Dalton who's playing for his job. And I think Cincinnati is going to be a team to watch out for. I keep preaching it every episode. I'm not shying away from Cincinnati teams this year. I think Tyler Boyd's going to get his own. I think that Dalton's going to hopefully be healthy all season. Who knows what they're going to do in the playoffs? I'm not predicting any kind of playoff, anything of that nature. But I think for fantasy purposes, I think we're going to get full 16 games out of both Dalton and AJ Green and hopefully Joe Mixon. And that's going to lead to a very scary Cincinnati team and a very weird NFC or AFC North, right? Like I'm not bought in on Pittsburgh. I'm not bought in on Baltimore. Cleveland seems to be the best team, but they're the best team on paper, and God knows that rarely works out. So there comes Cincinnati. Like sometimes it's better to be the underappreciated team, the team that no one's talking about. Like, could you buy in on Cincinnati winning the division, or is that too far?
Yeah, I think that's a little too far, especially with a rookie head coach. But I think Pittsburgh's definitely on the descent right now. Whereas Cleveland, like you said, on paper, it certainly looks like their division. But I would never count out a team like Baltimore. I think, even though I think Pittsburgh is kind of not where they were at a couple years ago, I think they could still challenge as well. But overall, I think Cincinnati ends up in last place this year. As much as I don't want to say that.
Oh man, so I'm overhyping them. Okay, hurt. Nick, bring it down to earth. Bring it down. All right, I will. A few more guys I want to talk about. A couple Detroit Lions. Well, one ex-Detroit Lion, one current Detroit Lion. Marvin Jones ranked 11th in 2017. Golden Tate ranked 14th in 2017. Two Lions finishing in the top 15 in PPR wide receiver. It was great. Last year, unfortunately, we did not get the same result. Kenny Galladay did finish pretty high. Golden Tate finished 30th. Marvin Jones didn't finish inside the top 80. So I don't know where he finished. Are either of these guys players that you're okay with? Golden Tate now with the Giants, to refresh everyone listening's memory. So they don't have a lot of weapons there. I mean, they got Ingram, they got Shepard. They went out and got Darius Slayton. Saquon obviously, but they're going to be throwing the ball. I don't think their defense is going to be solid enough to be stopping everyone all the time, so I think they're going to be in some, shootouts. Are you buying in on Golden Tate with the Giants? Are you buying in on Marvin Jones with Detroit, with Bevel becoming the new offensive coordinator, who we know is going to like to run the ball and then chuck the ball deep, which is kind of where Marvin Jones' territory is, but they also have Kenny Galladay. Are you buying into either of these guys?
I'm definitely not buying Golden Tate. I was really excited when the Eagles acquired him last year at the trade deadline, but whether he was misutilized in the offense or what, but he just didn't produce, and he really didn't look good either. I think he's kind of hit that point where he's on the downhill now, where signing with the Giants I thought was really, really strange, because I thought he would go to a team that was a contender, but then again, I don't know all the teams who are interested. But in that offense, I don't think he'll be all that productive. Evan Ingram, of course, we talked about last episode, is going to be huge this season. Sterling Shepard, he's crazy enough, he's the top wide receiver on the Giants right now, which just doesn't sound right. But yeah, Golden Tate, I don't think he'll be a big factor. He's the number 3 passing weapon in that offense. And if you're giving me a choice between Golden Tate and Corey Coleman, I honestly just might take Coleman just for the upside. Who knows how he does in a change of scenery? He played in New York for a few games last year. It wasn't the greatest, but I think Tate's kind of run his course in the NFL. Not to say he won't be somewhat productive. I think he could maybe go for 500 yards or so. But between the two, I'd like to take the chance on Corey Coleman in this last-ditch effort for him to kind of revitalize his career.
That's a hot take, man.
That is definitely a hot take.
Over Golden Tate, bro. Corey Coleman hasn't been fantasy relevant since his college days, bro.
I'd roll the dice on Corey Coleman.
You're crazy, man. I did not realize that we were going to bring up Corey Coleman throughout this episode, and I'm happy that we did. Marvin Jones at all, Detroit this year? Where's his ADP? He's going, I don't even know. I don't know where he's going right now. Marvin Jones, right there. 10th round. Yeah. He's going around Cortland Sutton, James Washington, Dede Westbrook, Kiki Kute, however you want to say it, Paris Campbell, Tyrell Williams. You taking any of those guys over Marvin Jones? Because I am not.
I'm down even further to the start of the 11th round, and I'm taking Tyrell Williams, even probably Devin Funchess over Marvin Jones right now, honestly. I know you're the Lions fan, so what do you feel about that?
That's tough, dude. Tyrell Williams, especially in Oakland, I don't know. I don't know, man. I feel like Derek Carr is going to push the ball to Antonio Brown too much for Tyrell. I don't know. Maybe he does do good. I don't know. Tyrell's the guy who I never want to start because he's such a home run hitter. It's either 25 or 0. So I can't buy into him. Devin Funchess for sure. It's a hell of a pick in the eighth pick in the 11th round. That'd be solid for Devin. I can't believe his ADP is that low. I like him a lot. But again, when it comes to the red zone, I also like Eric Ebron. I also like T.Y. Hilton. I also like Paris Campbell. I also like Marlon Mack. I also like Chester. There's a lot of guys I like there. I also like Jack Doyle. I don't like Jack Doyle, but there's a lot of guys in Indy. So for me, Marvin Jones, Detroit doesn't have a lot of mouths to feed. There's Hawkinson, Galladay, Marvin Jones, and that's it. Right. Carry on. But I'm just saying, Detroit, if we can score points, I say we I'm on the team. If they can score points, they could. We've seen that Stafford can score. We've seen that they can be a prolific offense. So I would buy in on Marvin Jones. Actually, one of the guys I would be thinking about, two of the guys actually, is James Washington in Pittsburgh. God knows the wide receiver 2 in Pittsburgh is going to be good this year, whether it's Dante Moncrief or James Washington. One of them is going to be solid because the wide receiver 2 always is. Look at Juju last year. Cortland Sutton, I like him a lot. It just kind of stinks that he's on Denver with Drew Lock and Joe Flacco. I can't buy into that offense. But if they can sneak attack and pull some lefty Louie stuff, Cortland Sutton's going to be the guy I look for. Him and Deshaun Hamilton, are going to be phenomenal in Denver, in my opinion. Deshaun, baby. A couple other guys that have a potential but probably won't get mentioned. Josh Gordon, comeback player of the year. What do you think on him?
Is he on track to play this year?
I have no idea. Probably not.
Yeah.
I'm assuming not, but I don't know. I was hoping maybe you'd have some inside information right as I set you up for that.
Yeah, that'll be the day. If you have a lot of bench slots, might as well just add him to it. You never know. We've seen what this guy can do in the past, and I like where he's at. So it could be worth just a flyer, if you have an extra bench slot, but otherwise, yeah, probably not taking a chance. I probably would rather have Josh Gordon, not even knowing if he's going to play, than Demaryius Thomas at this point.
Ooh, you took the words out of my mouth. That was the next guy I was going to bring up. Demaryius Thomas, New England. Any thoughts on him? You'd rather have Josh Gordon, huh?
Yeah, it looked like Thomas was clearly declining last year when he was traded to Houston. Yeah. Maybe, you never know, though. With the Patriots, it's always an enticing landing spot, especially for a guy who is a former Pro Bowler. So, we'll see what Thomas can do, but I don't have the highest expectations for him.
It does seem like some wide receivers can go to New England and find the fountain of youth, and I wonder if Thomas will be that guy. It'll be tough with Harry there. Edelman's still there. But that's it. They don't have Gronk. Sure, they got James White. I feel like Brady and Thomas could find a very good veteran connection. I would rather have Thomas over Gordon for sure. Defense. Jacksonville's defense was number 1 in 2017. 2018, they were 14th. Buying into him this year?
Probably not. They have studs all over.
They drafted Josh Allen.
Yeah, it depends. They have studs all over. Really, if you look at all their 11 starters, I think at least 8 or 9 of them have Pro Bowl potential, which you can't say for many teams in the league. Depending on how the draft goes, I've only done one mock draft, and that was with you. It was only a first round mock. But we'll see how I prioritize defense and special teams this year. The talent is certainly there, but it just can't seem to put together any consistency last year. Whereas in 2017, obviously they were a completely dominant unit. I think I might take a chance on them just because we've seen the glimpses and what they're capable of. But I think if you're going to take a chance on Jacksonville, probably put them on a short leash to start the year.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely nervous about them, but they have a lot of good people. So we'll see how it gets put together. That was a show, though. That was Comeback Kids. That was a good episode right there. Thank you, fans, for choosing our theme. We love that. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at RZR Fantasy NFL. Listen to us on SoundCloud, Spreaker, YouTube, and at home at the home base site. Go check out LARedZoneReport.com. Go to podcasts. Check us out there. This is a fast and growing website, so go check it out now so you can be the one to say, I remember when it was still a small website before we blow up. Follow me on Twitter at Nick Faber NFL. Where should they follow you at, John?
At Jon Valencia Jon Valencia BF.
Do you remember what your Twitter handle is, John?
I forgot that I changed it a year ago, but
that's what you get when you listen to the RZR Fantasy Podcast, baby. Is there anything you didn't get a chance to talk about?
I'll just throw out Chris Thompson into the mix. I know he was a guy we kind of talked about before we actually came on the pod, but he's a primary pass catching back in Washington. Keenum targeted McKinnon 68 times when they were in Minnesota together in 2017. We'll see if Keenum starts most of the games, but I think Thompson's definitely holds a tremendous diamond in the rough potential this season, especially in PPR leagues.
I like it. I like Chris Thompson a lot too. I like y'all listening. Thanks, John. Thanks, y'all. It's a cheap wine.